Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Looks like a few people are still joining, but we'll start with some quick housekeeping. First of all, thank you everybody for joining this session. We are super excited to talk to you about our experiences and what we've been hearing about how to perform inspections virtually. There's a lot of fun and interesting content we have prepared, and we should be able to do a good demonstration for you towards the end. A few things about this webinar software. You'll notice that in the Zoom interface, there should be a Q&A section. So as we're going through the webinar, we do try to keep this interactive. If you have a question, feel free to post it in there. We'll try to respond to those as they come in, or at minimum, make sure we get to them by the end. So please do use that. We will also be running a poll sort of in the middle, and that's also something that should pop up for you in the Zoom interface. And if you're having any issues with anything, of course, feel free to just chat that to us, and we will do our best to help you out. So I am joined today by my colleague, Mike. Mike, you there?
I am, yeah. Can you hear me, Nate?
I can hear you loud and clear. All right, awesome. So let's jump in. So first and foremost, thought it'd be helpful to just give you all a quick overview of the agenda that we have planned for today. Let's start by giving a very brief overview of who we are and kind of who you're listening to. And then we'll also talk a bit about why we felt it was helpful to put this webinar together now and why we think this is timely to talk about. The bulk of this session is going to then focus on virtual inspections as a concept. What are the benefits of doing inspections remotely? What are the options that are out there if you're thinking about this? If you are doing virtual inspections, how to make sure that's successful? And then, of course, towards the end, we're going to focus a bit on our solution and give you an overview of how it works. But just to be clear, our goal with this webinar is not to necessarily tell you that you have to use the Camino system. We really want to promote this concept because we think it's so beneficial to so many agencies. So again, just to start with a quick introduction about us. If you're not familiar with Camino, we are a software company that builds technology for permitting and licensing programs. So our core kind of flagship product is a full permit and licensing system that helps manage everything from the customer service side of things, kind of the online citizen engagement portal, all the way through the internal workflows, inspections, and things like that. And of course, because we do inspection management, virtual inspections is a big piece of what we think about and do. And it's why we felt like it would be a good thing to highlight for this session. On the webinar today, as I mentioned, I'm joined by my co-founder, Mike Rosengarten. My name is Nate Levine. Together, we are the two founders of Camino, and we've worked together for a long time. We love doing these types of webinars together because we go back a long ways. We're friends. Before Camino, we built a different company together that was servicing government agencies. So we've really been building technology for the public sector for about a decade now. All right, so with that, why are we doing this session today? Well, a few reasons, but the thing that makes this topic really timely is, of course, the pandemic that we all are finding ourselves in. As I mentioned, we've been building technology for public sector agencies for a long time. We've focused on permitting, licensing, those types of workflows. And a big part of what we've tried to promote is this concept of helping government go remote. This was something we were thinking about before we were all found in this situation, because this is really the way the world has been moving. As a company at Camino, we are a remote team. We don't have a headquarters. We all work from different states, in some cases different countries, and we've been able to function very effectively leveraging technology. It's enabled us to attract good talent and really, I think, solve problems in a much more cost-effective way. And we've started to see public agencies thinking more like this as well. And it's something we wanted to infuse in all of our technology, this idea of how do we help people get what they need done from anywhere? It doesn't matter if you're at City Hall or at home on a weekend. Of course, though, once COVID hit, this idea became a lot more urgent. In many cases, it was not possible to have City Hall open. And so many of the organizations we were working with were starting to figure out, okay, how do we take all of these different things that we're used to doing in person or maybe out in the field and figure out how to do it without that face-to-face interaction. So, in some cases, we helped agencies set up online application portals where they could submit plans remotely, do fee payment remotely. But there was this big question around how do you manage the inspection process, right? That's much harder to do through a website. And so we started experimenting, and we were able to develop a very successful virtual inspection solution. And we started to see this idea take off. And why we thought it would be really helpful to do this webinar now to share what we've experienced. The other thing that we're hearing a lot, of course, is with potential looming budget cuts, a lot of agencies are looking for ways to save money as well. And as we'll talk about, virtual inspections can be a very effective way to do that. So I want to turn this over to Mike a bit, because he's been an advocate for this type of solution for a long time. And I think he has a really good understanding of why this type of concept can be so helpful. So, and Mike, do you want to walk us through some of the benefits that agencies might see if they adopt a virtual inspection solution?
Yeah, sure. And I wanted to point out something about that last slide. As we've, both Camino, but also Nate and myself, we've spent a lot of time with public sector. We think a lot about civic tech and gov tech in general. I think one thing that I want to make sure I'm clear about is I think one of the benefits of going virtual is significant cost savings, not necessarily that a budget gets reduced or that you're going to lose some of your budget, but that you can make certain parts of your process exorbitantly cheaper so that you can keep staff on staff and so that you can keep things moving. So, there's components of cost savings that include truck rolls. How often do you have to go back to a site? So there's a lot of savings on things like fuel, transportation, drive time, some field equipment, car maintenance. And everything on this slide really came from working with some of our key early customers and friends in the industry who just help us think through things. Nate and I don't work in government, we work around government. So it's important that we spend a lot of time with folks who are in it day to day in the mud. So, there's significant cost savings there. And the way that translates for some of our friends is that they can take the saved resources and allocate them to avoiding things like furloughs or avoid other areas. Not all departments are affected the same. It does keep everybody safe. So while your department may or may not be worried about this from your staff's perspective, homeowners are. Some construction workers are. So I think it's a nice opportunity to offer something that has empathy behind it. And some folks are going to want something digital and some folks aren't going to want something digital. So I think it's a good check mark to help. Better for the environment, pretty self-explanatory. And happier customers. This is the one that matters to me. I'm a homeowner. I've been involved in construction for a long time. Look, sometimes schedules get shifted and an inspector can't make it, or an inspector is delayed due to traffic. It's not always the inspector's fault. Sometimes the homeowner doesn't show. I think the ability to go digital alleviates a lot of what is wasted leg travel sometimes, and really helps to just have a better customer experience from both perspectives.
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think this last point is actually really important and does get overlooked. It's interesting. We work with a very large county on the East Coast who does, they do tens of thousands of inspections like this every year. And we were talking to them about their experience, and I was asking them what benefits they saw. And I was expecting them to say, oh, we saved so much money and time. And while that was the case, what they said is the most important thing to them was that their contractors and homeowners were a lot happier, because as Mike said, if you're, let's say you go out and you do an installation, well, a lot of times that contractor can just get on the phone and do their inspection right there. They don't have to go home, come back out to the same home again later. It was just making everybody a lot more efficient as they went about their day. So thank you, Mike, for that overview. One of the points we did mention here is saving money, and hopefully this is pretty self-explanatory. You all work in agencies and know what type of budgets you have. But it was interesting as we were mapping this out with some customers to see just how much money can actually be saved by going to virtual for inspections. And honestly, this is why a lot of agencies that maybe initially started looking at something like this because of COVID have now said, hey, this is going to be a formal part of our process going forward. And I won't necessarily walk through all the numbers here on the screen. I think you can kind of look through them yourself here. But the thing we were hearing is that on average, for most inspections, there's probably about 30 minutes of driving involved. And when you start adding up the fuel and maintenance and the employee time, you do get to some very meaningful numbers. If you're doing that tens of thousands of inspections a year, could easily be into 6 or 7 figures that is saved. And now, to Mike's point, this doesn't necessarily mean like, okay, and now you don't need as much budget. It's not about, as Mike said, it's not about lowering the spend of the agency. It's about freeing up those dollars to go elsewhere, to adopt new technologies, to hire more staff, to do whatever it is you feel like would benefit your department. So I did mention running a quick poll. So I'm going to go ahead and start this. And again, you should see this pop up in your Zoom interface, and I'll maybe leave this up for 30 seconds to a minute to let people fill it out. But what we were hoping to see with this poll is just get a sense of what everybody on this call it finds most interesting with virtual inspections, because we do tend to see a range of answers. And I thought it might be interesting to just share with the group what is driving everybody else's interest. So it looks like we're getting some good responses here. Like I said, I'll leave this up a little bit longer to let everybody have a chance. So, interestingly, as we're seeing these answers come in, like I was mentioning, it's oftentimes an overlooked point, but improving customer service is kind of the leading answer here. I'll go ahead and looks like most people have voted, so I'll go ahead and end this. And I don't know if I'll go ahead and share the results. So you should be able to see those results now. But as you can see, if you're looking at it, 44% of the replies say better customer service is the top reason, closely followed by staying safe during COVID. And I think this is still a very salient point for everybody, especially as cases are surging in a lot of communities, unfortunately.
Well, it's interesting to me that this seems like when we did this, we hosted this webinar a month or two ago and actually got some different answers. So I think it's interesting to see a few months later how the trends are evolving. I mean, earlier this year, COVID was this thing. Some of us wanted to go away, or probably all of us do, but some of us hoping it would just pass. And now we're seeing, I used to live in California earlier this year, and I'm seeing my home county go on curfew and more lockdown. I think these two being the top, offer better customer service, stay at home during COVID. I'm hoping as a homeowner myself that we'll get some good out of COVID, which is a chance to reevaluate how we do things.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, no, thank you all for submitting these answers. It is very interesting, very helpful. And as Mike noted, a bit different than what we have seen on some other webinars. And so very interesting information. We did have one person put into the chat option that the correct answer is all of the above, which fair enough. I did think about putting that as an option, but I was worried that everybody might just pick that and we'd lose a little bit of information there. So, but yes, fair enough. I do get that oftentimes it's multiple of these. So, when we built our virtual inspection solution that we'll show you, one of the first things we did is go out and look at the market and say, okay, well, is there something out there already? Because one of the last things we want to do as technologists is recreate the wheel. We don't want to just go build the 6th version of something if it's already solved. So Mike, do you want to take us through a bit of what is out there for governments that maybe are thinking about doing video inspections?
I do. There was a question that came in and I said we'll get to it, and I don't remember which slide it is, but I did want to point out that, as we're going to see, digital inspections is not a cure-all, and we're going to advise you not to use it in many, many cases of inspections. But I think, Nate, that's coming up, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure in case the deck got changed on me. Things happen. So yeah, looking at this list, I mean, there are solutions like Camino, and personally, love it if you look at Camino, but really don't care that much as long as you're looking at solutions that are good for the customer. And I think those are going to fall under this first bucket, which is solutions designed for your problems and the problems of an inspector. I think there's another category, and we'll get to what that is, but in short, it's like note taking, annotations, maybe recording the call in some cases for legal purposes. Then you get into kind of the next category, which is the apps that may or may not be installed on a phone. And, people are going to be on different ones. You have the Zooms, the WhatsApp, some are paid, some are free, some do recording, some don't do recording, some use your personal number, some use your work number, you can customize them. And then you get down to the bottom bucket. This is native, so FaceTime, Google Duo, tools that are just on one of the major manufacturers of phones, probably works most of the time, and it's kind of your fallback. And so before we dive into a whole bunch of other things, you may not love the answer, but the truth is you kind of sometimes need to use all of them, and at least category 1 and category 3. I think you can skip category 2 most of the time, but categories 1 and 3 create a more holistic solution. There are going to be times when a custom developed or even platform developed solution like ours is not going to work as well as the trillion-dollar company that Apple has built. And, so it could be bad cell service or bad Wi-Fi. And that's when maybe something like a FaceTime will just work a little better. So it's worth noting, I wouldn't think about picking one. I would think about how this creates a comprehensive solution to your offering.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great point. I mean, what we often see with agencies that, for example, are using Camino, just because that's what we have most visibility to, is Camino is sort of the default system, and for 90% plus sessions, that's what they'll use. But then, as Mike said, there may be times where just because of, say, very poor reception at a construction site, you do want to use one of those tools that just is able to take better advantage of the phone's hardware. Yeah, no, thank you, Mike, for that overview. And with that, one of the questions that we get asked a lot is, okay, so how do I pick what I'm using? There are a few different options out there. What do I put in my tool chest? We've touched on a few of these, but just to go over what we feel are the really critical things you should be looking for in a solution. One is make sure it has features that do make your job easier. As Mike said, this is going to be stuff like being able to take notes during the inspection, being able to capture the screen, being able to record the session. These are things that, especially when you're not on site, are really important, because you may need to go back later and double check something, or maybe in a later inspection, you want to check it against the original session. Being able to generate a report at the end is a great feature that can save a lot of time. And these are things
Nate,
that...
On this point, I want to point out, because I recently just went through this again.
Yeah.
The after action report. I actually made my home inspector for my personal purchase, not from the city, use our own software, which was fun. I don't know if he was super happy about it, but what I got after that pre-inspection on the home was the after action report, which included everything. He was very thorough. There's probably 75 items on this list. Very handy for me to be able to look at. And not have kind of a difference of a world view. What he found, he sent me, and I have, and I think there's something great about that level of transparency. So this also protects the city. If you ask somebody they need to fix X, Y, and Z, and you've sent them this after action report, you have it on record, they have it on record. There's kind of no he said, she said, he said, whatever kind of grapevine.
Yeah, exactly. And then some other things that I think are very important to look at is finding something that will work on all devices and operating systems. There are a lot of different phone makers out there: Android, iPhone, and then of course there are different devices that an inspector may be using. They may be at their desk at a computer, they may be in the field on a tablet or their phone. So making sure that no matter what that setup is, you can run a seamless session is really key. And you know, as we'll note in a little bit, I mean, this is where things like, say, a FaceTime are going to start to be a little bit deficient. Obviously, that's an Apple-only solution. If one of those people is on Android, you now can't do a call. Other things that are helpful: avoiding options that require an app to be installed. You know, that's just asking for technical difficulties. You're asking somebody in the field to go install a new app, create an account, download things. It's just a lot of room for error.
Yeah,
And then
this
finally,
is category 2 from
yeah,
that
exactly,
previous slide.
exactly. Things like Zoom and Microsoft Teams, those are going to require an account. You know, finally, and we have this point here, you know, on this list, but we honestly thought about making this its own slide because it's so important. You should not be paying a lot of money for whatever you're using. And I cannot emphasize that enough. And Mike probably cannot emphasize that
Here's why
enough.
this point matters. There's two sides of this coin. First, video inspection, video live stream is not an emerging technology. It's not new. It's been around a long time. Phones have gotten better, higher quality. Internet and bandwidth has gotten more available and ubiquitous. So, you know, from that perspective, we might see more companies start offering these solutions, but this is not a new technology. We've been doing this a long time. Separately, it is a little bit new for this particular market, but it's not that new for field service work, for hotels, for apartment managers who own thousands of apartment units and have to do inspections. And so what you're seeing is, I think, a little bit of vendors preying on the current predicament that we're in globally, and then also the fact that the government hasn't traditionally been super fast to adopt super new things. So I harp on this fourth point because the thing that I just really dislike seeing is when my friends who are running building departments, and I'm sitting at like the California League of Building Officials and hearing about these exorbitantly expensive systems. And I'm like, for video inspection, even with all these features, it should be commensurate with the very, you know, small component of the overall inspection process that it takes up. So a couple bucks, maybe $5 if you're doing not much volume. If you're doing in the tens, 20s, 100,000 inspections, you really should be thinking around $1 an inspection or something.
Yep.
It can't be done free. Apple and Google subsidize it. But I've seen some people out there trying to charge 10, $15 an inspection. I'd be wary of that. I'd be asking why.
Yep. Exactly.
I'm off my horse. That's
No,
my
no,
one horse in this whole presentation.
it's a really important point, because we do see this. We do see vendors out there charging that amount, and it just does not make sense. And it's frankly going to make it so that this just can't be a long-term solution for you. And that's unfortunate. So, Mike mentioned that we would touch on this. We had a couple people, you know, posting some comments alluding to this. When do virtual inspections make sense? The truth is, not for most types of inspections. Now, it doesn't mean this doesn't make sense for most inspections, because a lot of the inspections that agencies do are the smaller inspections that are well suited for a virtual session. But a lot of inspections that you do are not going to make sense for this tool. They're going to make sense to go out and do on site like you have been doing. So virtual inspections, where does it shine? First of all, small projects, you know, HVAC, electrical work, minor repairs, things that don't require understanding the full structure of a building, don't require, you know, walking around an entire site, don't require being, you know, deep underground, something like that. You know, it's a few minutes, quick photos here, there, and you can kind of approve something. Code enforcement, another area where we're seeing a lot of adoption. You know, somebody makes a complaint about something on their neighbor's lot. Okay, the code enforcement guy, instead of driving out, he hops on a video inspection, maybe with that homeowner, takes a look, says, yeah, you need to cut that tree, you don't, things like that. And then, you know, another area we see this getting used is for follow-up inspections. So let's say you've already been out to a site, you've done an inspection, but a couple things need to be corrected. Well, now a virtual inspection might be a great idea, because you don't need to go get that holistic sense of the construction site. There's maybe just a couple things that you now need to revisit, and that could be done easily through a phone. And again, that's where having that recording can be really nice, because you can go back and compare it to what you saw the first time. So yeah, definitely do not look at this as something that is going to replace the way inspections are done today. It's really just a great way to, again, kind of save that time and energy and effort for the high volume of these simpler inspections that are done all the time. So just a couple of quick things on how to run a successful program, because we get asked this as well if you are using virtual inspections. First and foremost, make sure that you have some instructions available. So if you're going to do a virtual session with a contractor, maybe you want to have a handout, a page on your website, just some things to prep them that you could send in advance to say, here's how a virtual inspection should be run. And there are some things you may want to ask them to have ready, like a flashlight, a measuring tape, just tools that will make it easier to do the session remotely. Other things, give the user a way to test their device and their signal. So for example, this is something that our Camino system, we do this automatically. We actually give users a way to do this test when they're invited to a session. But regardless, you'll want to have some way to do this so that they can make sure that they have the right type of camera, that they have an LTE enabled phone, things like that, so that the session will be high enough quality. And then it is important, as we noted earlier, to have some sort of a backup plan. There are going to be times where, for whatever combination of reasons, you try to do that session, it's just not working. They don't have the signal, they don't have the bandwidth, they can't figure out how to get their phone to work, battery dies, whatever. Either having another solution maybe that you could switch to, or just having sort of a contingency plan where you ask them to do a video and send it to you, or maybe you have somebody go on site later. Just having that backup plan is a good idea, even though we don't tend to see that being necessary very often. So there are some common questions and concerns that come up. We've done this enough now that we've seen some different patterns and some things people bring up that are reasons that maybe they are not excited about virtual inspections. Mike, do you want to talk through these a bit and how these can be addressed?
Sure. Find a solution that offers these if you think there are going to be issues, and make sure you work with your legal team to find out the different challenges with going virtual. Every jurisdiction we work with sometimes has some slightly different nuanced rules. But biggest questions, concerns in actual hiccups in the field when we're working is video, audio quality poor. Usually it's video. Audio is a lot easier to be high quality. And there are challenges when LTE or 5G isn't available, and then you need Wi-Fi. There's sometimes when none of those happen. But most modern phones, we're talking iPhone 8 Plus, any of the Pixel series phones, most of them have no problem transmitting the high quality. It's going to be a question of their connection. And look, if you're doing a countryside inspection, I'm out here in Nashville, Tennessee. If I head down into Franklin, or I'm about 30-40 minutes south of the city, you start to get to places where the signal just drops. And if you're outside and don't have Wi-Fi, it does get a little challenging. Other common questions are the he said, she said situations. I actually touched on this a little bit, but we get asked, can you record somebody's home, both from a legal perspective as well as from a customer service perspective? Ideally, your solution allows you to do either, and that's really a matter of you figuring out what you want to do. But we have had cases where it helps immensely on both sides. Again, sometimes a homeowner hears something the wrong way, and they end up doing something the wrong way, and then they come back in later and feel like, wait, that's not what I was told, and vice versa. One of our customers calls this fishing for the answer that they want. And they use one of our other products to solve that, because it's actually can be challenging. Data, who owns it? Who accesses it? City owns the data. City can access the data, or agency. Customers do not have, customers meaning your customers, do not have access to after action reports or anything that you don't send them over email or communicate to them. So this data is all yours. It's hosted privately and secured. But these are common questions, and questions you should ask any vendor if you're considering this. Potential for fraud. I don't know really if this happens very much. The question comes up, but again, I don't work in the industry straight up, so I don't know how often someone is at one job site claiming they're at another. For us, we solved this by offering GPS detection on the phone. And so as part of that after action summary and during the inspection, you can see where that person is on a map. GPS is accurate enough for an inspection, usually within about 3 to 5 meters. So sometimes there's some potential for fraud. I really haven't heard of this happening much, but the question comes up enough that maybe it does. So if you're in the chat, I'd love, if you're willing to, I'd love for someone to +1 that they've had issues with this for my own edification.
Yeah, agree. This question comes up from most agencies we talk to, but yeah, I am not aware either of a
Let's
case
poll
where
the
it has happened.
audience.
Yeah, again, I agree with Mike. If somebody has had this happen to them, would love to hear about it. One thing I'll just add also on that first point is, if your agency tried virtual inspections, say 5 years ago, and found that it didn't work great, this may be a great time to try it again. And as Mike said, one of those reasons is phones and mobile networks have just come a long way, and these sessions are much higher quality than they used to be. Okay, so moving on to our
One
inspection.
quick question that came up, Nate, that I want to answer.
Sure. Yep.
And I did post it hopefully publicly, but just to add, Joseph asked, is the data stored in the US? I believe you said it was stored locally. Yes, it is stored in the US in the cloud. Unless you're a Canadian customer, then we store it in Canada in the cloud due to GDPR and other types of regulations around where you store data. We store it where the customer operates out of and where they're usually legally bound to have it. Some countries have tighter laws. So for example, California is going to probably be changing their laws where data has to be stored in California if you're a California company offering solutions. So we store it wherever is legally safest for you.
Yep. And one thing to note there, some agencies do have requirements to have data deleted after a certain amount of time. That is something we can do as well. Actually, good that a question came in, because I was about to just note that as a reminder that you can use this Q&A feature. Obviously, some people have already been doing that, but just in case you forgot that was there, you are able to go in and post those questions through Zoom.
And we did hear through the chat, I'm very excited to report that I've now heard my first case where someone was in a different house when they said they were doing the inspection. That was that's pretty interesting.
Wow.
And that is semi-true. It really depends. So the question here is that all data is subject to FOIA laws or statement, and you can't delete public data. This is sort of true. Again, it depends on the country. In Canada, a resident can choose to say, I want my data deleted from the government. And so, yes, it's really, like I said, you got to work with your legal department to find out what is allowed. Some of our customers don't record any calls or use solutions that do call recording even when they're not using Camino, because they don't want to be subject to FOIA or the headache of storing data. So, that's really, it's state by state, jurisdiction by jurisdiction.
Yep, exactly. I flipped ahead there by accident. But so with all that, everything up to this point has really been sort of broadly applicable to virtual inspections. And what we thought it would be good to do is give a little overview of how we approach this area. So as we noted, we did build a virtual inspection solution earlier this year. It has been very successful. It's widely used across the country. And so these are some of the highlights, and we'll show this in a demo. But first and foremost, this does work on any device from anywhere, anytime. You don't need an app. You don't need an account. You don't need to install anything. You can literally pick up one phone, one laptop, and run an inspection in a matter of seconds. Some other things that we support, as we'll show, it records video. You can take notes. You can grab screenshots and annotate it. All of that gets automatically generated into a report at the end, save everybody a little bit of time there. As Mike said, we do capture the location, so we will verify where that phone is broadcasting from and actually map it to an address. And as we noted earlier, we have made sure this is something that scales well and is financially approachable to almost every agency. Our baseline pricing is about $5,000 a year. So obviously some agencies that may be a little bit much, but for almost every city that's an approachable number. And then as it goes up, as Mike said, it ends up being about $1 per inspection. So you can kind of do the math of what that might look like for you. But all in all, we have tried to keep this as affordable as was technologically possible. One thing I'll also note is that this does work with your existing solution. We do not need to replace part of your permit system. You do not need to buy the Camino permit system. In pretty much every case, agencies just buy this, they use it alongside whatever they have, whether it's Excella, Tyler, Trackit, you name it, whatever permit system you have. This does not require anything on that end. So one final point really before we we sort of move more into the demo is just kind of comparing what you might get with Camino to some of those other options that we looked at earlier. And I just thought with all these points we've talked about, it might be helpful to frame some of the things that we try to offer that you may not find with other solutions. And again, those are going to be some of those things I noted earlier: the ability to work on any device, location verification, note taking. FaceTime, Google Duo, those aren't going to record. So that's another thing to keep in mind if you're using those types of solutions. Now, of course, what those other options offer is they are free. And that is a nice benefit for, I think, agencies that are doing a very small volume. Those probably do make a lot of sense. But hopefully this is just a helpful overview of what you may be getting or not getting based on what you choose.
And one other note on this for our folks here, I mean, these apps are getting better. So they are adding more features. So some of them may now support notes and screenshots. Some of them may support no app required. So again, in the spirit of transparency, we think these are important features, but they have to work for your agency. And if there are solutions out there, if you're already on Microsoft Teams and they're adding these features, definitely double check, because due to COVID, all these digital companies are pushing out new features every week, month. So a lot of new stuff is happening.
Yeah, it's a great point. There's obviously lots of innovation happening in the world, and this may be out of date in a couple months. So we're going to jump into the demo basically now. I thought it'd be helpful to just note that again, this is in use across the country. I think we have a couple dozen agencies using our software, ranging from very small agencies to some pretty mega ones. I mean, we have Fairfax County, Virginia, Orange County, Florida, Riverside County. These are multi-million resident organizations that are using our solution very effectively. All right, so with that, we're going to jump to the demo. I will come back to this slide, but if what you see does look interesting to you, you can request a free trial. We are happy to let you try out our software for a week, 2 weeks, whatever. No commitment. You just go to our website and make a request. And I am personally promising anybody here who does request a free trial that you will not get stuck being hounded by a salesperson. That is not how we operate. If you do a trial, we will set you up. You try it out. We'll check in with you at the end. And if you say no thanks, great. We part ways and no worries. If you like what you see, we can talk further. But we are not going to pressure you in any way just because you tried out our software. All right, it does look like a couple questions came in, but let me see if either of these are relevant before we jump to the demo. Yeah, it looks like a couple questions have come in, but I'm gonna come back to those because I do want to get into this demo. All right, so Mike, you ready?
Yep, I'm gonna sign off here and I'll be ready.
All righty, so we are now moving into the live software portion of this demonstration. Mike has graciously offered to use his home for this inspection, so we're going to get a little tour of at least a couple rooms. But this is our virtual inspection software. I'll come back to this screen in a little bit. This is basically just the dashboard where you can look up inspection sessions and schedule sessions, things like that. But let's go ahead and start a session and see what this would look like. Basically all you got to do is come up here and click the Start Inspection button. So again, this could be contractor just called in, they want to do an inspection, or maybe an inspector's in the field and they want to run an inspection of a site that's across town. Obviously, I'm demoing from a laptop, but everything you're seeing does work from a phone or a tablet. So you can do this again from any type of device. And launching a session is incredibly easy. All I actually have to do is put in this attendee's phone number. So I'll put in Mike's phone number here, and that's it. That's all I have to do. And from there, I can launch it. If I want, I can put in some other things like, I might want to tie this to a, building permit record. I might want to note what inspection type this is. So this is a water heater, put an address in. I can also invite other inspectors to join. So let's say I have a couple colleagues that want to participate in this session with me. I can go ahead and just invite them here, and then they would be able to watch the same inspection. But I'm going to go ahead and start this. I'm going to start it with recording so you can see what that's like. Obviously, we have an option to start without recording as well. But that's it. You put in the phone number, you click start, and you're kind of going from there. Now, on Mike's side, he's gotten a text message and he's going to do a couple things to join. So I'll actually show you over here what Mike's kind of seeing. So after starting this inspection session, as I noted, Mike's going to get a text message that'll look something like this. He's going to click that link in the text. It'll ask him to do a couple things like allow access to his microphone, his camera. He puts in his name, and then he's in. So it's that fast. I mean, there's really like 3 buttons you got to click as the on-site user, and then you're in the inspection. So if I flip back here, you'll notice, all right, Mike's done that, and we are live streaming his home. So, yeah, Mike wants me to note that he did just move. So, you know, if anything's a little messy or out of sorts, it's not because he's a messy person. So a couple things to note here. Obviously, video quality is high. We do strive to make sure that you have a nice high quality feed, and there is 2-way audio. So Mike and I can talk to each other. You're not going to hear him, of course, because he's not on the Zoom session anymore, but I can hear him, and vice versa. Couple things over here on the left. You'll notice that the location, as I mentioned, is being captured here. So I can actually see exactly where this is streaming from. It'll calculate that address for me for verification purposes. And then below that, it does also show me the signal strength. So it's one of those things that's really helpful if you do start to have any technical issues. It might show you what side those are coming from. So okay, let's do a little pretend inspection here. Mike, you want to show us something that I can capture an image of? Maybe an outlet or a door handle, or just something in the house that we might want to put in the report. All right, so Mike's gonna come down here and show us this this outlet. All right, so Mike's showing me this outlet. So let's say I wanted to add this to the report. I might say, actually, go back there, Mike, for a sec, and take the picture yet. Oh, I guess he's getting a tape measure or something. Oh, he's getting his tape measure. All right, cool. All right, perfect. So yeah, so let's say I wanted to get a picture of this with a measurement on it. I'd say, great, hold still, go ahead and capture image. And there we go. I have a screenshot for my report, and I can mark this up. I can, if I want, I can annotate on it. I can draw. I can circle things. Whatever I want to do. I can put notes. 2.75 inches, things like that. All right. You want to show us something else, Mike? You can surprise us. All right. He's grabbing a flashlight. We didn't rehearse this, so I'm not sure what he's going to show us next. I'll be surprised too. All right. It looks like a crawl space. All right. Yeah, there you go. He didn't need the flashlight. Okay, cool. So now let's say we're in this crawl space, and we wanted to grab an image of something in here. All right, yeah, hold still there. I'll go ahead and grab an image like that. So again, as you're going through this report, anything that you feel like might be important, you can go ahead and kind of just be marking those things up. And that's how the system works. It's really straightforward. We're trying to basically make sure that the software gets out of the way of the person doing the inspection. We don't want this to become something that you have to do a ton of training on. You basically just learn it, click the buttons, and your inspection's going. So that's how this works. There's not too much more to the software itself. I'm going to go ahead and end the actual inspection here. You'll notice that once I end it, I can mark, if this was a pass/fail. So I could say, okay, yes, this was a pass, and I could say, see report for some corrections, and go ahead and submit that result, and that will generate a report for me. So that's how this system works. You jump in, you do your inspection, take your notes, and then you can kind of move on with your day. So it did look like we had a couple questions that came in. I do want to just address these before I get too much further. One question was, what if the customer does not have a smartphone or has a bad signal? Yeah, as we noted, obviously then this is really not going to work for you. The customer does need to have some sort of a device with internet and a camera. And again, if they do have a bad signal, you may have some challenges as well. Question 2, why would I want to do a virtual inspection and potentially miss several structural or code issues that I might not catch if I was there in person? If something's missed, I maybe approve the project with possible huge issues. So yeah, no, this is a great question, and again, this is why knowing how to do a virtual inspection is going to be obviously part of the process. Agencies that we work with do things a little bit differently if it's virtual. They may have people move through the home a little bit slower and may take some more pictures than they would normally, just to make sure they're capturing a better sense of the site. But really, the most important thing here, again, is just noting that virtual inspections is not going to be the answer for many types of inspections. For things that are complex, involve structural elements that might interface with a lot of different parts of the code, yeah, probably good to go on site. Where virtual inspections is great is, hey, I just want to take a look at this water heater or this sink that was installed, where odds are there's not as much to miss. And then it looks like a couple other questions. So it looks like somebody was asking, hey, sorry, I think I missed this. Why use Camino over doing just a standard FaceTime session? Yeah, so again, great question. So there's a couple things that are going to be really nice with something like Camino over FaceTime. One, again, this works on any device. FaceTime is just an Apple solution. So let's say you have a contractor who's on an Android, can't use FaceTime. That right there, you have a big problem, and more than half of residents in the US are on Android phones. So that's a really key issue there that you're going to run into using something like that. And then, of course, the other functionality that we've noted here is going to be helpful. It's recorded. With FaceTime, you're not recording the session. We verify the location. Again, FaceTime's not going to do that for you. And then finally, we do have this functionality that lets you build a report as you're going through the inspection. So, of course, if I go ahead and refresh this, you can see up here at the top of my dashboard, this is the inspection session that we just completed. And you can see over here on the right, this report download button. So if I go ahead and click on that, this will show me the inspection report that was generated from the pictures I took. So, again, this is really nice functionality that inspectors tend to love having. They don't have to go build this report later. It's done automatically for them, and just kind of another thing you're not going to get with something like FaceTime. We did have another question come up. It just says, I know we talked about saving money and better customer service, but how does this make the inspection better? Again, I think it's a good question, and the truth is, I don't think it does. I mean, the point here is not to necessarily make the inspection better. The point of virtual inspections is enabling you to do inspections easier, faster, with less friction, doing more inspections. I mean, that's really where this type of functionality becomes helpful. It's that not needing to drive on site. It's that ability to do an inspection on the fly when maybe you didn't have an inspector available in the area. It's that ability to have more inspectors doing these inspections at the same time. That's really where we see the benefit in this type of software. It's not necessarily doing the inspection better. I don't necessarily think that you're going to do this any differently than you would if you were there. Yeah, and it looks like Mike's been chatting with some people in the chat, but we also did have a question about whether Mike and I could talk to each other. And yes, the answer is that Mike and I could hear each other. I was talking to him. I was sort of directing him around. He could hear me. It's just you all weren't able to hear his side. So these have been some great questions. thank you all for posting these. I mean, obviously keep them coming. There's not a ton more that we had planned for the demo. We really just wanted to give you a quick overview of how that works and some of the key functionality here. But please do keep posting questions, and we will be answering those as they come in. I don't know, Mike, if you had any closing thoughts or things you might have wanted to say as we wrap up.
No, I'm a little taken back that I found cockroaches in my attic, so I hadn't been in there yet.
Good to know. Yeah. Well, there you go. Successful inspection. We had a question: how does this work alongside other software? Yeah. So as I was mentioning, this is really meant to just sort of be a standalone solution that you can use regardless of what other solution you have. We do support, if it's interesting to you, we do support setting up an integration where you could basically pull the inspection results from Camino into your permit system. So that is functionality that we could help you set up depending on your permit system if you wanted to, but of course you don't have to do anything like that. So yeah, there's not necessarily a out of the box functionality that works with a permit system. It's just something that we could do with you. Had a couple other questions. One about scheduling inspections. Yes, this is actually a really hot topic. It's been requested by many of our users. We are going to roll out inspection scheduling before the end of the year. So you'll be able to set up inspections in advance and then just sort of, click start at the right time.
Yeah, and you'll also, if you so choose, be able to embed a widget on your website that allows people to request times, and then you can choose to confirm, deny, or change them, as well as schedule your own internally with an applicant for upcoming. And then with all that comes reminders a day before, 10 minutes before, and helpful instructions on how to prepare and do a test before your attendee joins.
Yep. I had a couple other questions. One is, do we have any municipalities using this for pool inspections? It's a great question. I don't know off the top of my head. I would guess that the answer is yes. We have some large agencies in Florida using this, and I imagine they have a lot of swimming pools. I don't know for sure, but if you want to follow up with us, I'd be happy to look into that. A couple other things. We had a question about how much the software costs. So again, as we noted earlier, the pricing is sort of a per inspection cost, and it does decrease as you do more inspections. So for our kind of baseline pricing is about $5,000 per year. That's kind of the introductory pricing for smaller agencies, and then again, as you go up from there, it ends up costing about $1 per inspection. So let's say you do 30,000 inspections virtually per year, you'd be paying about $30,000 per year for the software. Let's see, some other questions. Is it possible to integrate with Tempest? And it looks like we also had a question about how much the integration costs. Yeah, so really with integrations, I would encourage you to just follow up with us after the session. We can address those questions. It's very specific on your environment and how it's currently set up. And there's one more question that came in that was whether this is a separate cost from our, it was the Camino Guide product. So for those of you not familiar, that's sort of our permit management software. This is separate, yeah. So if you buy our permit guide, this does not come with it, but they do work together as part of the same platform. And I will say, if anybody on this call is interested in both of those, please do reach out. We are offering some end of the year discounts, things like that. So we could work out a deal for you probably if you were interested in both of those. Yeah, I'm looking to see if there's any new questions that have come in. Yeah, a bunch of questions about integration. So again, we can follow up with you one-on-one to discuss what that might look like. But other than that, I am not seeing any new questions. I'll hang for another few seconds here in case anything else comes in, but otherwise, looks like that's about it. So again, thank you all so much. We love this engagement. I mean, it just makes this so much more fun when the audience is engaged, asking questions. So it's been great to see all that. We would love to hear from you. Any feedback you have on the session, whether you liked it, didn't like it, helpful, not helpful, really, really appreciate that type of input. So if there's things that you think we should have touched on, love to hear that. If you are interested in the system or doing a trial, again, just go to our website, reach out, promise we will get this set up and you can just kind of use it yourself and see what you think. But yeah, other than that, Mike, thanks for letting us see your home and for co-hosting this with me.
Thanks everyone for joining. I appreciate it.
Well, I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and I hope everybody has a safe and wonderful holiday season.